All right, so I'm Caroline Chilla, and I'm going to be overviewing my health education philosophy that I developed this semester. So I'm going to briefly go over the backgrounds that kind of led me to my philosophy. Then I'm going to go over my actual philosophy statement, followed by the constructs that I use to base my theory, and then the three examples that support my arguments. So, in reviewing the literature, I ended up providing obesity prevention research that will be used to support my arguments. This is because this just provides really prime evidence in supporting the need for behavior change theories. That's going to be the main theme of my philosophy, is the idea of behavior change and how we can facilitate that into academic settings and home settings to help in preventing chronic disease onset in adolescence. I'm super interested in working with adolescents, so this is kind of where the base of my philosophy comes from. The idea of promoting healthy behavior change in younger groups is ideal because that way they can become more so conditioned growing up to live healthier lives rather than trying to make a hard behavior change later on in life. Next, acquiring information about physical activity, sedentary behavior, and good nutrition are not sufficient in translating to, like resonating health behavior change practices. It requires a little more complex and multi-dimensional approaches rather than just a type of educational course. I'll kind of delve into that later as to what constructs I'll be using. And then lastly, this resonated a lot with me, how harboring self-doubt can essentially prevent someone from acting on their intentions to make a behavior change. So this is another area that I'm going to discuss and provide evidence as to why this applies to my theory. So my philosophy statement is the following. In health education, knowledge is power. Maintaining the power to prevent disease and live a life where we can thrive rather than just survive is health and well-being. Approaching health from a preventative perspective by developing realistic behavior modification goals, manifesting confidence in translating intentions into action, and maintaining an efficacious support system can directly prevent disease and indirectly improve quality of life. It is imperative that health practices of health educators are represented equally across personal and professional environments. In order to support my philosophy, I'm going to be discussing the following constructs. These include goal setting, self-efficacy, and community support. All of these are constructs that are integrated from both the behavior change and decision-making philosophies. I decided to use these in my philosophy because I feel like they're the predominant mechanisms that are used in order to make behavior change in health behaviors. In order to live healthier, a person needs to learn how to make a desired behavior change. This can start with the use of SMART goals. SMART goals can facilitate behavior change by hindering the onset of chronic disease because they are goals that are specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time-bound for the individual looking to make that change. So rather than just winging it and, attempting a behavior change randomly, they can use this specific construct to focus and guide their actions because SMART goals have been known to aid in the structure of progress towards that desired behavior change goal, according to the authors that wrote the article that I'm going to be using in supporting this claim. So an intervention that used the SMART goals along with other constructs like goal setting, building self-efficacy, and enhancing readiness for change by means of health questionnaires found that families became more aware of the importance of eating healthful foods than before intervention activities that they partook in. So rather than just a significant change found in a student, it was actually found that a different dynamic was supported in the entire family dynamic. So this may indicate more so of an important role of supporting community/loved ones/families, which is my next point that I'm going to discuss in later slides. The next construct I want to discuss is self-efficacy, and self-efficacy is essentially the one's belief in their ability to make a behavior change, and self-efficacious people are more apt to attempt as well as maintain difficult behaviors, especially when barriers arise. And this is just because they have a little stronger sense of belief in themselves, and because they're more in tune with themselves, they're able to make that change, and they know how to cope when things kind of go awry or they get off track or whatever the case. Another point that I found in the literature was how those who harbor self-doubt are unable to translate their intentions into like active actions, and they might even fail to act upon their behavior change intentions because of that lack of self-efficacy, like I mentioned. So if someone lacks motivation and even the belief that they're able to change, this will completely hinder their ability to actually change. So it's crazy how a change in one's attitude really does go hand in hand with making behavior change. The more optimistic outlook one's gonna have on their ability to do something in a more healthy manner, the more likely they are to do that. And this is where perceived self-efficacy comes into play, because this is what aids in adopting essentially optimistic self-love and overcoming temptations or avoiding a harmful behavior or course of action that we're used to taking. So, delving further into the literature that supports my claim as self-efficacy is an advantageous construct in behavior change is seen in a randomized controlled trial that compared two groups and aimed to examine the psychological mechanisms supporting dietary behavior change. So this study looked at a theory-based psychological intervention group and compared it with outcomes from a nutritional education session, which was their control group, and found that intervention group participants were able to make the desired behavior change that were related to dietary intake more readily than those of the control group. And the intervention group specifically assessed self-efficacy and strategic planning, meaning they looked at things like action planning and coping mechanisms. So for starters, they were able to assess where, when, and how they would go about their desired dietary behavior change, and then how to overcome potential barriers that would occur. And these allowed them to essentially have more favorable impacts and outcomes, and were able to maintain these behavior changes by the end of the intervention study. So the use of self-efficacy just really helps individuals build confidence in themselves to be able to make a certain behavior change, and that's why this is so important in the prevention of onset of like chronic diseases and terminal illnesses. So the last primary construct of my philosophy is caregiver support. And essentially, disease prevention can't be facilitated without really firm support from parents or primary caregivers. And this is because behavior change doesn't happen alone, and having someone there to help reinforce that behavior is key in actually reaching the SMART goals that you originally set in the first place. So healthful living is a lifestyle change that requires active participation and dedication from the participants. And I'd say it almost requires an equal level of participation from the family members involved or the parents or siblings. This is a definitely multi-component approach to behavior change, and that's because not one of these constructs has the ability to make that behavior change possible. All of them together work synergistically to help facilitate the behavior change. And findings from a intervention that I found revealed that increased frequency of family meals and improved mealtime dynamics were outcomes from intervention groups incorporating things like nutrition education, cooking skills, family meals, and goal setting, which is one of the themes and constructs from earlier, as well as motivational interviewing mechanisms to promote nutritional behavior goals. And the meals essentially provided like check-in sessions for parents and adolescents to be able to create a really supportive mealtime environment. And so this is just one example of how incorporating a caregiver in the support of behavior change is really advantageous. And essentially, the main outcomes included that the intervention group showed decreased BMIs at the end of the interventions. So I will include a reference for that on the next page. But caregiver support is really vital in the facilitation of behavior change. And this just really wraps up my philosophy statement and is a really strong supporting piece of work here. So to wrap up, for me, health is preventing the onset of illness and disease, and this helps someone live a healthier life where they can actually thrive rather than just survive. The burden of illness and disease just completely takes away from one's quality of life. So, using adolescent years to condition individuals to understand the importance of living a healthy lifestyle through diet, nutrition, and really solid emotional health is important. This can be accomplished using three main constructs that I went over in my presentation. SMART goals are useful because they help set a strategic plan for achieving behavior change goals. And then having self-confidence or self-efficacy just helps one's ability to be able to make that change. Both of these are really important together because, one's not going to help get to the end goal of what we're looking for, but the synergy of using both constructs is going to be super useful. And then that, in addition to a super supportive like family or, whatever social system that you have, is necessary, because this will help reinforce behavior change, because on your own you can't really achieve it. It's going to take multiple people in your life to help reinforce those changes. And then knowledge is power, and it's up to health educators to provide younger generations with that information that they need to go about their life in healthier ways. Each study that I provided, like I mentioned, incorporated multiple constructs and didn't just focus on one. So that's kind of the bigger picture of my presentation, is how it takes a really multidimensional approach in health, and that's why I think starting in adolescent years is really, really beneficial. And then the last thing I didn't really brief yet is practice what you preach. So it wouldn't really count if I was just saying all this and not practicing it myself. Living, as healthily as possible by eating well and getting physical exercise is really important to me. And I think that it's really important that health educators do, practice both professional and personal health lifestyles, just because it's hypocritical to say one thing and do another. So I think by setting an example and living a healthy life is the best thing that health educators can do for people. And yeah, that's kind of an overview of my philosophy and how I think that health should be viewed and taken more seriously for future generations.